Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's video. What I'm going to talk about is something that is very interesting, at least for me, and it has a lot to do with why I became a medicine woman. And it's not so much about magic in the sense of the trivial way, but it's about magic in the old way of how the Egyptians used to invoke whatever they wanted, which is another way of saying intend. So today's video is going to be on Egyptian magic. And what I thought would be kind of fun, as you can see, I kind of dressed up for it, is I thought it would be cool to talk kind of in the way of how Isis would talk. I have a book that I love, and I've had it for years. It was given to me by a friend of mine named May, and she's actually an Egyptologist. And so she gave me this book for my birthday, and it's Isis, Queen of Egyptian Magic. And the author is Jonathan Dee. And I highly recommend this book because I just really love it. And I've had it for many years, and I will come back here if I ever wanted to have an idea on when I used to dance, kind of get an inspiration for a theme for my choreography. I would come to this book, and I think that a lot of what is important to understand about anything that is creative, because I think that even doing incantations, invoking anything with the ethereal world, with deities, with gods and goddesses, as the Egyptians did, is that it's the essence of how you do something and the intention of how you do something is very important. The spoken word is huge. And I used to hear when I went to church, the priest would say something about the spoken word. And there's a lot to be said for that, because the Egyptians were very poetic in how they did their ceremony and their rituals. And the thing to remember with the Egyptians, and we're talking, 2,000 years ago and before, that they took it very serious, and they did a lot of rituals every day, and they did it within the day many times. And the priests and priestesses would actually do a ceremony for the sun rising, and then they would have another ceremony for late morning, then they would have another ceremony for early afternoon, and then they'd have another ceremony for, they would just do different kinds of rituals and ceremonies for everything, because they had this idea that every aspect of the day was really important. And so it was a lot of work. And a lot of people think that kind of doing magic and trying to do these rituals is like fun. I'm not saying everybody, but I think that with Hollywood, and I truly believe with the way that magic is perceived today, that people don't understand that there was something very regal about it, and how you spoke to whoever it is that you were trying to say. For instance, you wanted to talk to Isis, and you wanted Isis to bless you with a good harvest or something like that. How you spoke to her for the Egyptians was really important. So the Egyptians were great with the spoken word. They just made it sound, they wanted to obviously let Isis know that she was the most amazing goddess ever. And then they wanted to say all these amazing things about her, and then throw in what they needed, which was a good harvest, so they can continue on living, so they can continue on worshiping her and telling her how amazing she was. So the Egyptians really had it down. They just had ceremony, and they had the spoken word down to a very beautiful, poetic way. Also, I think what's really important is that magic was something that was just a part of how they lived their life. It wasn't like they tried to ask for something magical to happen. It's just that the Egyptians understood that how they lived their lives was really important when it came down to the afterlife. And the Egyptians had this idea that the afterlife, that they were going to get everything, that they would be able to have the life that they never had in the reality they were living. And they knew that they had to ante up and make sure they lived good lives. And even if they didn't, what was really interesting is that they would actually find people who were scholars who would actually write in these amazing attributes of how they lived their lives. So it was almost like they were trying to coax their way into the afterworld and say, oh my gosh, I was this amazing person, even if maybe they weren't. So it was very interesting how they viewed their lives and how they prepared for the afterlife, and then how they spoke to the gods and goddesses. Now, I'm going to focus mostly on Isis because I'm more connected to her. I like Sekhmet, I like Bastet, and there's Anubis, there's Osiris, there's Hathor, there's there's many gods and goddesses, and I'm not going to do a video today on all the gods and goddesses of Egyptian magic. I'm just going to focus on a few. So the one that I just want to do a little caveat here. The one that I think is really interesting that is connected to Dogman is Anubis. And I have this little statue of Anubis. And Anubis has the dog head, which is really interesting how a lot of people who have seen Dogman, the cryptid Dogman, and Michael has done a video just recently on the Dogman. I think it was called The Dude with the Dog Head. And it was a pretty cute title. But this is what a lot of people say a Dogman looks like. So I find that very interesting. So it's almost like, could the cryptid way back when have been alive? And people just thought, oh, hey, this is something that we're going to worship. Or is there more to the story? But I like Anubis. And I think that there's something to be said for that connection with Dogman today and Anubis being an Egyptian god. So I'll put this over here. So when we start out, what I want to do is like I had said, talk about the dedications and how they spoke to the gods and goddesses. So I think it's important to understand really what magic is all about. And so I'm wearing glasses, which is not a part of the total look, but I have to, so I can read this to you. And we're going to kind of talk in Isis and her viewpoint. And so this is the divine magic is that of the gods. And so I think it's important to understand that there's different types of magic that the Egyptians believed in. The high magic is temple magic, that of priests. These wise folk make invocations, prayers, and offerings to the gods to ensure the health and prosperity of the country and its embodiment supreme, the pharaoh. Complex rituals and the calculations of the heavenly bodies, the stars and planets, may also be their preferment. Then there is the art of magical numbers, which is also high magic, for the universe has its mystic numbers that are a secret name, a hidden code for its meaning. Then there is architecture and engineering, such as the pyramid builders who imbue their awesome creations with mystical power and meaning to stand the test of time. Now here's something interesting. Low magic. This art is not practiced by a priest, architect, or mathematician. Every outlander believes that every Egyptian has knowledge of the cunning arts of Heka. My unending life has mirrored, and this is Isis talking, the highs and lows of the magic that I practiced in spells that have been woven for me. I have felt the ecstatic pleasure of divine love, the bliss returned when I gave healing, and the rejection that only a beggar knows. I have been a goddess enthroned in luxury in the royal city of Heliopolis, wife to a pharaoh god Osiris, and queen of the two lands of Egypt, and a fragile mortal, outcast and alone, desperately protecting my child of golden horse. So whence comes my reputation as all-powerful for one? For the oddities that I claim as a family may be said to wield mighty power too. My brother Set near destroyed my son and me. My aunt Bast holds the secrets of ferocious love and healing. My husband Osiris is ruler of the afterlife and weighs the hearts of men in his two hands. And Uncle Thoth, the wise, who measures time and rules hidden magic, caused my birth, though not as mate to my mother, as you will see. That's another story we're not going to get into today. In truth, my prowess as magician is celebrated so because I am the only deity to hold the supreme power of creation itself, that which is shared with my great father, the sun god Ra. I stole this power from him, but that is another matter. And she was able to get equal power from her dad because she found out his hidden name. And that's another story as well. For now, let it be decreed that I am well placed and land to wise counsel in this, my sorceress memoirs. So when you look at Cleopatra and you look at any of the other temples, when you go to Egypt, you're going to find that Isis is everywhere. Now, Hathor is very important too, because Hathor could easily be connected to Bastet or Bast. But you're going to find that most of the people, Isis was huge. And Isis just basically was the one goddess that everybody kind of went to for everything that she wanted. And what's very interesting is that even though the pharaohs were male, a lot of the Egyptian people actually had the goddesses that were there and that they were praying to. So it's interesting how you have the male energy and the female energy, or I call it the feminine divine. And so interesting that the pharaohs had queens, but what's interesting is that the pharaoh is the embodiment of the gods and goddesses. So as you can see that they don't view male and female energy the same way that we do. It's kind of intertwined. It's the yin and the yang, which is both. And so the pharaoh embodied both. So it's a different way of looking at things. So next, I thought it was interesting to talk about the scarab. Now, the scarab is something that is very interesting because of the way that they view it. And I think that I used to have a scarab that had my name on it, but I don't have it anymore. But this is what the scarab looks like, and it's a really big book. So I'm just going to try to show it to you. That's kind of what it is. Let's see. Try to get that glare off of it. There we go. I think that's. Make it up a little higher, and that's it. So that's a scarab. Okay. The scarab is the most common of ancient Egyptian amulets. The sculpted form of the beetle can still be found in great numbers in the desert surrounding the fertile Nile Valley. It is one of the most potent aspects of the sun god Ra. Many prayers, incantations were addressed to Ra in his form of Kephers. The scarab Kephra is also called the keeper of the name, and it is in this form that the sun god closely guards his secret name, the word of power that caused the universe itself to come into being. As an extension of this idea, it became the custom for Egyptians to have their names inscribed on the underside of a scarab, which would then be worn, usually on a string around the neck, as most Egyptian peasants were illiterate. They could use their scarab to stamp their signature on a scribe clay tablet without having to grasp the stylus. So as you can see, as it stated, that a lot of them were illiterate. So the symbols for the gods and goddesses was very important too, because when they would be going into a temple and they would need to know where to go to do their prayer and their ceremony, the symbols, that was very important. It connected them to the actual god and goddess. So symbology was huge in Egypt. I find that very interesting. I think that it's also important to state that if you look at the hieroglyphs and you look at the symbology of the hieroglyphs, what when I remember being in Egypt and when I remember going into certain temples, is that the symbols themselves emanated a type of energy. So even when you went into a tomb, or I went to the Valley in Kings and Queens in Luxor, and what I found very interesting about that whole location is that when they were actually getting the tombs ready, and they start the tombs early on in a pharaoh's life, so that by the time that they've lived a long life, hopefully they have a fantastic and wonderful tomb where they can be buried and be sent off in the afterlife. But what I found when I went into a couple of the tombs was that there's an energy to it. And so that has a lot to do with ceremony, is the symbology as well. So it's not just in the spoken word, it's also in how elaborate and all the paraphernalia that goes along with the ceremony. So the preparation of it, how you address the god or goddess, and then actually how you write it. That's important as well, or the symbology that is all around whenever somebody is actually doing their prayer. And if they were illiterate, then they really counted on those who could actually do the symbology and scribes and all of that, so that they would know kind of where they're supposed to be. But it was also, I think, a direction for spirit for in the afterlife, because I think symbology has a lot to do with the afterlife as well. So I think the spirit also, when it leaves the body, would know where it was or where it could go back to. So there's something to be said for an image and what that image is all about. So here we have what's called the seventh heaven. And I thought this was very interesting. And I'll tell you why. Let me read. The Egyptians believed that the body had 7 components. Each of these had its own funerary rites, hence the widespread practice of mummification, as well as the preservation of various organs of the body and the establishment of the fetishes or cult statues to house the more incorporeal selves. And those are the those little, I'm trying to think of the word. Give me a minute and I'll get back to it. But where they used to put the organs, each of the bodies, I have to think about what that is. I can't remember. Anyways, let's get back to this. The first of these selves, the cat, described the physical form. The second self, or ka, was cognate with the astral body or etheric double, the energy body that exists outside the physical body. The ba, the third self, was usually pictured in hieroglyphic writings as a bird possessed of a human head. It can be thought of as one's intrinsic character, as an animal spirit guide that symbolizes our deepest instincts. And the ba and ka were thought of to survive into the afterlife. So what I was thinking of was the canopic jars, is where they used to put the organs. So as you can see, there's 7 aspects of the body, and then going into the heavens. The fourth self is the kybit, the ghost of the self identified with the shallow thrown by strong light. The fifth self is the Ren, one's true name. Pharaohs who had posthumously fallen from favor had their names obliterated from temples and other public places. This would condemn their souls to oblivion, because it would also result in the destruction of all the other selves. The Ren was therefore a necessary ingredient for the survival of death. The Egyptians believed that consciousness resided in the human heart, or Ab, the sixth self. The Egyptian Book of the Dead details the ceremony of the weighing of the heart against the feather of truth, or mat, in order to be admitted to the afterlife. The seventh self is the Sat, or soul, but this may also refer to the 7 selves in total. This mysterious 7th portion is also called the Shu. The Shu is also the name of Isis's grandfather, deity of the air, and one of the sons of Ra. In this context, Shu is thought to represent breath, which may link with the funerary rite of opening the mouth of the deceased in order to release the Shu. The third word used for the seventh self is Ku, or spirit. This description is used in the sense of blessed one, or one who has ascended. So different parts, I mean, you have your ethereal body, you have the breath, you have all these different aspects of what they believe would happen when you would pass on. And they're really important. And that's why they went through the ceremony with the canopic jars and placing everything. And they also believed that the consciousness was in the heart. That's why the heart was important. And that's why they didn't care about the brain. The brain was just, they make a mess of the brain and pull it out through the nose. And that's just kind of something that is an afterthought for them. So the heart was very important to them, as it should be for all of us. Here's something very interesting, I thought, that I loved, actually, and it was called the Eye of Ra. Several Egyptian goddesses were habitually addressed by the title Eye of Ra. The wild and bloodthirsty Sekhmet is the obvious example, yet others, the kindly Hathor and the seductive Bast, also gained this sobriquet. Sobriquet. That's an interesting word because it took me a while to figure out how to even say it. It's sobriquet. In addition, a protection amulet commonly worn as jewelry on the chest took the form of an eye. This was called the Wadjet, meaning whole one, and is often referred to as either the Eye of Ra or the Eye of Horse, both deities being solar in nature. So here is Sekhmet, and she's my favorite. Actually, of all the goddesses, she's my favorite. I just connect to her. I don't know why. She's the goddess of chaos, or the goddess of war. She's, if you did a prayer to her, it would be to probably cause problems for somebody. And that's not why I like her, because I don't do that. But what I like about Sekhmet is the lioness. I like the cat people. I like Bastet, but I just like the lion. And there are some people who actually have seen a different alien group that they call the lion people, the lion aliens. And I don't even know if there's a connection to that as well. I mean, if you think about Anubis and then you think about the dog man, people who have seen the lion people, and then here we have Sekhmet. So maybe there's something to all this. Who knows? But here she is. Put this up. Okay. So let's see. Let's go on. One thing that I thought was really interesting is that not everybody who prayed to the gods and goddesses had the best interest of others at heart. If they felt somebody did something wrong, or they felt, oh my God, so-and-so tried to take my husband or my wife or do whatever, they would do a prayer to the gods or the goddesses to repel evil, or to either, kind of direct it towards that person's, towards wherever they were living, so that they could kind of make a point to, hey, stay away from the person I love, or hey, you did this or that to me. And so it was just common for people to do different types of ceremonies. And so kind of what I want to get to today is that this is their life. This isn't just a ceremony done in secret, in private. This is, everybody did it. It was just expected that every Egyptian knew or had some kind of a lower level of ability to do these prayers and rituals. And it was just their society at the time. So this is interesting. The mirror charm to repel the evil eye. So if any of you don't know what the evil eye is, this is to repel the evil eye. And so basically, I mean, we could say it's the stink eye, or it's the dirty look, or whatever it is that you think the evil eye is. If somebody said something mean or horrible about you, that could be considered the evil eye. It's just any negative energy that is directed your way is really basically the evil eye. So that's to repel it. It's an arrow through the eye. So thought that was interesting. This is again in Isis and her kind of format, her way of talking. The spell of Thoth was simple indeed and most potent. Under his direction, I took a bronze hand mirror of grace and beauty, and with a pin from my hair, scored the back surface until it was dull and scratched. Now the use of this trinket is twofold. When there is one whose intentions are false and whom you suspect may do you harm by envy, then it is a small matter to contrive to gaze upon the reflection in this mirror, and then their true motives will soon be made clear. So this is kind of like something that she's telling someone they can do to find out the true motive. Think about it like tarot cards, something like that, but this is what they would use outside of that. If someone is actively trying to do you harm, as ferocious Sekhmet was, there's all these little dramas that go on between the goddesses. Then it is this scored side that is employed for the magic. The scratches on the reverse of this mirror will return the evil to the sender without delay. Remember that it was from the eye of Ra that Sekhmet took her birth, and thus the effects of this evil, which may be termed as wickedness and envy, are called the evil eye. So Sekhmet, because of whatever she did, now we've got the evil eye, which is, that sucks, of course. But this is what you can do against it. The method of both of these enchantments involves an invocation of the beauteous goddess Hathor, the cow-eyed and horned one. So if you want to see what Hathor looks like, before we go any further, this is Hathor. Isn't she beautiful? And Hathor is kind of considered the mother of the universe as well. She's could be considered sister to Isis, or I had the impression she was older than Isis, but what do I know? Now I'm reading that she's maybe like considered a sister. So, but anyways, always learning something new, and here she is. So, I thought she was beautiful, and there she is. Okay, I'll put her over here. Okay, I thought there was more to this. Yes, speak the words. Lovely Hathor, daughter of the sun, let light dispel darkness. As Ra rises in the morning, let the eye of light dispel the eye of darkness. Beloved goddess, hear my prayer. When these words are spoken, take care that you do not glance at the scored side of the mirror, not even for the briefest second, but continue to look upon your reflection in the unmarked shiny surface. Let your mind dwell on the evil that has been done to you and raise the mirror towards the one who has sent this mischief. Although if this person be not present, then raise it towards the direction where he or she dwells. So there you go. There's a little incantation that you can do if someone's done you wrong. So, hey, we all have people that we don't always get along with, and that's a little good incantation to know all about. Okay. Oh, this is interesting. I thought it would be kind of fun to, a lot of people probably wonder when we talk about magic in Egypt, okay, what did they say? And so when I said the spoken word or the poetic aspects of the word, which are very important, when I said that in the beginning, this will give you a good idea of kind of how they used to talk when they would do their prayers, when they would do an incantation or something to get the attention of the god or goddess. So it's important to understand that if in today's day and age, even with people who are doing magic, they have to understand that there's always something listening on the other side. There's always something listening. What the Egyptians understood and made them different is that they understood they were directing their blessing, or their prayer their incantation for the blessing of a specific goddess or god. They were directing it to them. It was like straight communication to that god or goddess. When people do the Ouija board, or when people are doing magic and they don't understand what they're doing, they're kind of scattered energy, so they can direct it everywhere because they don't know what they're doing. And if somebody or something is listening in, it's going to know if this is somebody who knows what they're doing, if this is somebody who's prepared for what they're doing, if this is somebody who knows exactly who they're directing the prayer to, or if this is just somebody who just doesn't know what they're doing and they're just kind of like anybody could answer back, and they're going to answer back. So what I want to show you is this is what they say, and this is how directed they are to whoever the god or goddess is. So this is called Praise to Osiris. Hail foremost of the Westerners, Wenifer, Lord of the sacred land, you have appeared glorious like Ra. He sees you and rejoices in your beauty. The sun disk of Ra is your sun disk. The rays of Ra are your rays. The crown of Ra is your crown. His greatness is your greatness. His beauty is your beauty. His throne is your throne. His destiny is your destiny. His west is your west. His wisdom is your wisdom. He will not die, and you will not die. He will triumph over his enemies, and you will triumph over your enemies. No evil will come into being against him, and nothing evil will come into being against you forever and ever. Wow. I mean, wow. So they didn't leave anything out there. They basically said everything possible so that Osiris was equal to Ra. So there's something to be said for putting everything into your incantation, your prayer, getting it ready before you say it. So it's important to just understand you got to be prepared. And that's something that I think is missing in today's day and age, because with all the Hollywood movies that are being created that have to do with magic, they make it all horrible and scary. Magic isn't scary unless you make it scary. Magic is something that can be beautiful. It can be an intention. So actually magic to me is just intention. If you're intending something that you want, and you're asking God, the angels, or Buddha, or whoever it is that you believe in, or that you are devoted to, then you ask them. So I just think it's just another way of saying intention, but magic is a lot more, it's something that's old, and we kind of have this romantic notion to it. Intention is something that is more modern version, but it's still the same thing. So I don't think magic and intention, they're any different. I think, let's put it to you this way, I think intention is the sister of magic. So there. So this is interesting. The spell to banish the anger of a god, and we don't want that. Woe to you, powerful keeper of all mysteries. A god who is angry with me has spoken a word against me, but wrongdoing is washed away and is now in the hands of truthful Nat. See how I am brought to you. Be gracious to me and dispel all anger that is in your heart against me. So if you hand off it's basically handing off your sins to somebody else who can kind of handle the sins. So if you just say, hey, I'm a human, I angered a god, so I'm going to hand off what I did to another god or goddess, and just see if they can just take care of it for me. So they weren't dumb. The Egyptians understood that, well, if I did something to make somebody mad, and if it's a god or goddess, and if I have unfortunate things happening to me, and I say to myself, well, this must be because I angered a god or goddess. Well, I'm just going to go ask another god or goddess to intervene on my behalf so that I can kind of get out of trouble. And maybe they can talk to whoever it is I made mad and just say, hey, she's human, he's human. Why don't we just kind of let bygones be bygones? So the Egyptians, like I said, this was their everyday life. mean, they looked at everything that happened to them as some type of symbolic meaning. And so if somebody woke up in the morning and they walked out the door and they were walking to work and they tripped and they fell, yeah, they might say, oh gosh, I angered somebody. Or they might just think, oh, I'm just kind of clumsy. But either way, they always had a plan B to anything that ever happened. Now, if somebody tripped going to work and then they tripped again when they were at work, they'd probably go, well, I angered somebody and I need to get some help. And it can be something silly like that. But for them, it wasn't silly. For them, it was just, okay, how can I be a better person? And sometimes it was, well, how can I kind of get around the little deed that I did that wasn't too cool, and kind of get forgiveness, but ask another God or goddess to give me that forgiveness. They're always trying to figure out how to work their everyday lives around their belief system. I'm not saying that we don't do it today, but we don't do it to this degree. I mean, if I trip when I go out the door, I just know I'm clumsy as heck. I don't go back into the house and say, oh, Goddess Isis, did I make you angry? No, I don't do that. So I just think that how we are today is maybe, I don't want to say more realistic, but I think that what we are is we've kind of gotten away from that way of living life where we depended on the elements as our survival. I mean, we really have come a long ways since 2,000 years ago. And in some ways, I don't know if it's really for the better. I like actually pulling in symbology into my life every day. The Native Americans do it. They, if you see two hawks flying in the same direction as you're walking on a path, that's a sign. Michael and I saw an eagle and a hawk, and the hawk and the eagle were circling around each other. That hardly ever happens. Boy, that's a big sign of something awesome. And I'm like, oh, look at that. And Michael thought it was too. So, there are signs and symbology of interesting things happening in our lives that we try to pull in. But I think as a society, we've kind of lost that. And so what I thought would be kind of fun today is to show you how the Egyptians just had it in their lives every single day. So now we've gone past angering the gods. So this is interesting. So obviously I had to pull in, like, they believed in asking for help with fertility and for love and for all of this. And so this is called Nephthys's recipe for a child, which I thought was interesting. And this is again Isis talking. To have taken my semblance and seduced my beloved Osiris, Nephthys would have remembered a lesson or two from my aunt Bast, goddess of cats, fertility and joy. I know this to be true because later in my existence, Bastus became known by my name, Bane Aset, which means the soul of Isis. Not that I advocate my sister's deception, but this small ceremony may be practiced by women to entice the favor of my aunt so that they may have the man of their choosing. The following may be collected and placed by an image of Aunt Bast, great deity whose cat is the body of a woman and her head that of a sacred cat. And I don't think I have, no, I don't. I don't have a sculpture of Bastet, but it's the cat. Yeah, the cat goddess that we all love. And I actually have my little cat right here. So just think of her. So sweet smelling oils and perfumes to be placed in a Bast jar, a stoppered bottle named after Bast, a taste of honey, mint for cats do like it. And you want to attract her. So you want to, I would think it would be something a little different than mint, but that's just what they wanted. The powerful words are said of the woman's own making. So you can say anything you want about the person that you want. She tells of the man she desires and asks Bastus for her guidance and blessings. She may light a candle before uttering her incantation and extinguish it when she is done. So there you go. So if you want to attract somebody, you can ask Bastet to help you out. I thought that was interesting. Okay, so here's another spell that I thought was interesting for immortality. So, you know, we all would like to live forever as long as we don't look old as heck. So anyways, spell for immortality. I have come to be your divine protector. I waft unto you the air of life and the north wind which comes forth from the god Tem to your nose. I have made whole for you your windpipe, and I make you live like a god. Your enemies have fallen under your feet. I have made your word to be true before Nut, and you are mighty before the god. So that's kind of interesting. And I guess that it's to the point, you know, that all this stuff has happened, so therefore I should be immortal. So let's see what else. But I don't know if there's a point to wanting to live forever. I mean, I have other things I want to do and other places to go. So interesting. Oh yes, I like this. This is called Snakes, Crocodiles, and the Afterlife. And I thought this was interesting because there is so much, the Egyptians lived their everyday lives preparing for the afterlife. It wasn't like a dread, it wasn't like the Grim Reaper, it wasn't like dark shadows, it wasn't like scary dudes coming to grab you. It wasn't any of that. It was just like, oh, I can't wait to die because I'm going to be in the afterlife and I'm going to see all my friends and my family, and then I'm going to live the rest of eternity, you know, in bliss and love and light and all this stuff. And so there's a lot to be said for that. But there's different aspects to how they believed in the afterlife. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead are a number of spells intended to protect the deceased as they passed into the underworld, the realm of Osiris. In addition to the many incantations used to protect the heart, body, and soul of the dead, there are also specific spells that repel snakes and other predators. In the afterlife, it was thought that the dead person continued to live his former life, should he be judged worthy by Osiris, and therefore the assailants that had plagued the living were also thought to continue to plague the dead. There are spells to drive away crocodiles, reric snakes, songstress snakes, a cobra, and a beetle. Some spells are simply dismissive and mildly insulting, such as, well, I don't know, such as spell 33, and we don't know what spell 33 is, in which the deceased claims that the reric snake has eaten a mouse and chewed the bones of a putrefying cat. In the more serious case of a crocodile coming to steal magic, the incantation is more vehement. The gods are invoked for the four principal directions of the compass. Get back, crocodile of the west. My detestation of you is within my belly, for I have the power of Osiris and I am set. I would get him to, that would get him to leave you. Anyways, it is likely that in calling upon these two brother gods, that the deceased would summon the protection power of Osiris and the destructive forces of Set in order to deter the crocodile. So you'd want both to make that crocodile go away. So I don't like crocodiles, so I would probably say it 10 times. So this is something that I thought was interesting. And it's called the Scorpion Goddess. And again, it's another part of magic for the Egyptians. Selket was a scorpion goddess of magic. She is depicted as a woman with a scorpion on her head and sometimes as a lion. Her name means she who breathes, which perhaps implies her ambiguity. It's so funny reading these to you. My English isn't too good. Ambiguity, spitting deadly venom at her assailants, yet fiercely protecting her allies from harm of death. An image of Selket is carved upon the canopic shrine of Tutankhamun, along with that of Isis, her sister Nephthys, Neith, goddess of war. She exists there as the goddess protector of Quibi Sinuth, one of the four sons of Horus who guarded the king's internal organs in the canopic jars within the shrine. Inside the shrine lay 4 tiny gold coffins, and on each was a spell to invoke the goddess and son of Horus, whom she protected. Selket's spells reads, "My 2 arms are upon what is in me. I protect Qui Bisenef, who is inside me. Qui Bisenef, Osiris King Neb Kufra Re, true of voice." This last name, Osiris King Neb Kefru Re, is actually the true name of the deceased Tutankhamun. The Ren, necessary ingredient in the magic of survival in the afterlife. Remember, the Ren was in the 7 aspects of heaven that I had read earlier. So, there's a lot of incantations and stuff that they did when they mummified the bodies, and the priests had to do an incantation for each organ that they would have in the canopic jars. So, just think about the heart and what they would have this huge big prayer with the heart and each part, and then when they would wrap different parts of the body, they would have an incantation for that. And there's just so much into the ceremony of dying. I mean, it was a huge ceremony. It was just one big ceremony to die, which I think that's kind of cool. I mean, we do enough celebrating in life, why not in death? So let's see here. The cobra goddess. Now, one of my animal totems is the cobra. And I didn't really know this until one day I wasn't feeling very good. And I had the sense of something massive, and I'm talking about the crown being, in the back up here, about this big. And I felt something slither up and just kind of looking at me while I was sick in bed. And I got the impression that it was a cobra. And if I would have had my eyes closed and not looked, I would have literally thought that there was a cobra to the left side of me. And so as I found out by one of my mentors, that the cobra was coming to kind of soothe me, to protect me while I was not well. And it made sense to me because I've always had a fascination with cobras, even though they scared the bejeebies out of me. But I like what they symbolize. I liked that, and I was going to wear these today, but you can't see them. They're my armbands. But as you can see, it's the cobra here. And I just, I've always loved the symbology of what the cobra represents for Egypt. So it made sense to me that the cobra was my animal totem, or one of them, because almost everybody picks a wolf or a deer or a horse or an eagle or whatever, but mine is the cobra. Let me read to you about the cobra goddess. Rajet, the cobra goddess, is rewarded in the Osiris and Isis myth by being invested with the red crown of Lower Egypt. She is the protector of Horus, the pharaoh to be, along with the vulture goddess Nekhbet. Together they were known as the 2 ladies of the pharaoh. She was believed to have created the papyrus swamps, and perhaps the papyrus plant itself, that hid Isis and Horus from Set. Pharaohs wore the symbol of the red cobra on their heads as a symbol of her protection. The Egyptian Book of the Dead states that the Wadjet rises upon your head during every hour of the day, even as she does for her father Ra, and through her, the terror of which you inspire in the spirit is increased. She will never leave you. Her protection duties continued into the afterlife, as the cobra can be seen on the death mask of Tutankhamun. Wadjet was also associated with the lion and the eyes of Ra, as daughter of Atum Ra, who created her as his watchful eyes. By the late period, Wadjet and another sacred animal, the Ichneumon, this creature was similar to a mongoose, reputed to destroy snakes and crocodile eggs, according to the pyramid texts. The goddess was worshipped as the temple of Wadjet, or Pidep, which is interesting. So there you go. Cobra goddess. She's my animal totem. I love her. Now, this is what we were talking about. I was talking about earlier about magic can be manifested for good or evil. I mean, good or bad. I mean, I think in most of the Egyptians' lives, it was for the good, because they were always living for the afterlife. They wanted the afterlife to be there for them, and so they didn't want to have to go and hire a scribe to write all this stuff about how great they had lived their lives, when it really didn't happen, because we know that the truth would come out in the end. So they wouldn't be as light as a feather. We know what happens when you're not as light as a feather, you get eaten up. And so nobody wanted that. So I think for most Egyptians, it wasn't about the dark energy. I think that when it came with the priests and priestesses, I think some of them got too full of themselves and their power. And I think that's kind of where the crazy magic started to happen, because we do know that sorcery started in Egypt. That's just kind of, there's many stories of how it was started and what the priests would do, what they were able to do. And that kind of makes sense, because think about ancient aliens. And if aliens were able to teach abilities to humans, in order for them to rule, it would make sense that they would teach them in a way to make it more ceremonial, so that it wasn't just given outright to them, where they had to kind of earn that right or that ability. So that kind of makes sense to me. But anyways, transformation by magic is a ready foil for deception and deceit, but may also be used for the greatest magic protection, as you shall see. Now, gods and goddesses have always been possessed of the power to transform the cat, the physical form, into whatever manner of beast they desire. I have mostly preferred the semblance of a great bird, which is why I am often depicted with great wings spread about my slender form. All pharaohs knew me as their mother and inscribed my image throughout their kingdoms. And this is, again, Isis talking. Oops, sorry. And this is her. So this is Isis with her wings. Isn't she pretty? So as you can see, and many hieroglyphs, and I have the papyrus paintings that I brought back from Egypt when I was visiting there. There's many that have her with her wings. So. Okay. Spell for being transformed into any shape. How about that? I have passed by the palace, and it was a bird that brought you to me. Hail, O bird, you who flew up to the sky. The white and shining bird who protects the white crown, I shall be with you. I will join the great God. Make a way for me so I may pass through. So that's a little incantation you can do to, I guess, turn into a kind of bird, whatever bird you want. So any shape you want, which is interesting. And as you can see, that it's not like always elaborate, but it's actually the intention of the word, and it's what they put together that gets the point across to whoever they want to get the point across to. So I thought that was interesting. So here we're going to talk about Bast, because I think that's important, the cat goddess. And I know for a lot of women, she's their favorite. My favorite is Sekhmet, but I like them all. There's not one that's, there's not any god or goddess that I've ever come across that I haven't liked. I'm not too sure about Baal and some of the others who are like, tend to be more negative. I'm more into the positive aspects of the god and goddesses, but I do understand that the dark and the light energies, that they play a huge part in life as we know it. Back then, today, it hasn't changed any. Cat goddess Bast was also known as Bastet, and to the Greeks, who strangely considered her to be a virgin, Artemis. An alternative name was Pshet, the original pus, P-U-S-S. Bastet's cult center was at, let's see, Bugatis, modern day Tel Basta, north of Giza. And I'm probably butchering all these words. I'm trying my best. Which came to prominence during the rule of the Libyan pharaoh Shashank I in the middle of the 10th century BCE. As Bashantis was his residence, I said that wrong. As Bubastis was his residence, the city and its principal goddess Bast rose to fame and prominence within the Egyptian pantheon. Mishwasher, meaning little cat or pussycat, became a popular name for Egyptian girls. Bast was portrayed as a cat or as a woman with the head of her sacred animal. She had a reputation for ferocity as a protector from demons and disease. Her gentler side was as the sensuous deity of music, pleasure, dance, and fertility. Her feminine qualities associated her with Hathor. Bast may have been another form of that goddess or considered to be her sister, and as the possible daughter of Isis. Such is the nature of the convoluted family relationships of the gods of old Egypt. Festivals at her hometown of Bubastis, recorded by Herodotus, were held during April and May when the citizens took to sailing boats, singing and playing drums. Bast figurines often show her holding a sistrum, an ancient Egyptian percussion instrument. The sistrum provides another link to Hathor, a goddess with whom Bast shares many attributes. This musical instrument was considered to be the sacred symbol of laughing Hathor, patroness of passion and drunkenness. It is just like with the Catholic, with their saints. I mean, it's really interesting how the Egyptians kind of would take a god and a goddess and they kind of connect them to something, like drunkenness or, or sex or whatever. I mean, they seem to just try to have that connection with something that is more powerful than them, but they just kind of want to give it some kind of meaning to their everyday life. Like there's a saint for driving, there's a saint for animals, there's a saint for the kitchen, there's a saint for children, there's a saints, all kinds of saints in the Catholic religion. And I was raised Catholic, but it doesn't mean I'm not Catholic now. But I understand why that's necessary, because it kind of gives a connection to a person's everyday life if you have something divine connected to it. And I understand that. So that's kind of what the Egyptians did, which I think is important. So let's say, what else we have? Desire and deceit. So we know that, somebody was going to do a prayer for love, or if they were mad at somebody to destroy the person that broke their heart or whatever. So there's this one incantation which I thought was interesting, and I think this one is called the Song of the Red Fish. Speak out loud this incantation, for it was inscribed on a vase at Memphis and dedicated, I think, to my daughter-in-law, beautiful Hathor. Both men and women do send requests such as this to the goddess, putting their love cause so that she may bless them. I love to go and bathe before you. I allow you to see my beauty in a dress of the finest linen, drenched with fragrant oils. I go down into the water to be with you and come up to you again with a red fish. Looking splendid upon my fingers, I offer it to you. Come, look at me. So if you could get the attention of a goddess for love, and say, look, I want to go be with this person over here, and come look at me and take a look at me and see what I look like. And yes, and then grant me my wish of being with this person over here. So then they would influence that person and make them attracted to you. And so therefore, then you guys could get together. So I don't know if Egyptians were necessarily involved in marriage, but I do know that they did enjoy the pleasures of life. If they saw somebody that they liked, they wanted to get all the help they could possibly get to attract their attention. So that was another way of doing it, a little incantation and saying it out loud, and an offering, and you just see where your love interest would go. So that was interesting. I don't know if it worked in all cases, but hey. Let's see. And we're going to go, I don't want to make this too long for you guys. Divination by lamp and flame. The incantation to Ra is found on a papyrus composed in the 18th dynasty in the reign of Pharaoh Amenophes III, Nebmantra, 1390 to 1352 BCE. It is unfortunate that the text does not go into inform one of how the answer to the question is given. However, its similarity to a form of divination called promancy may suggest the solution. In this case, one need not gouge a hole in a wall, but stand by a window facing east. The primomantic version of the invocation is as follows. Fire, fire, holy fire, unto fortune I aspire. I await a sign from thee, that my prayer answered be. The invocation to Ra or the above may be used. At this point, take a pinch of powdered frankincense and sprinkle it on the lamp flame as you speak your question. The flame will answer the question as follows. The answer is yes, or a good omen if the flame ascends in a thin, steady spire or a conical shape with little smoke. It is even better if the flame is silent, neither crackling nor spitting. It is an excellent omen if the flame splits into 3 prongs. The answer is no, or a bad omen for the future if the flame becomes smoky and dark, or does not rise, crackles and spits or splits into 2 prongs. It is worse if the flame suddenly bends to one side, because this warns of impending difficulties and sickness. It is worse still should the flame go out, for then you will have earned the enmity of the gods, and the inevitable disaster will strike. The only hope in this case is to spit at the lamp and curse it with the misfortune that would otherwise fall upon you. In the flame wafers from side to side, then a visit from friends and relatives is to be expected. I don't think I'd want to spit at the flame, but hey, if I don't want bad luck or anything coming at me, then that's what I would do. Okay, the last but not least is the scrying of the bowl. Now, scrying is something that can be done in different ways. I truly believe that it should be done with water. It can be done with oil, but I think water is better because water is a conduit. So I think it would show better whatever answer that you're looking for. I think actually a bowl made of quartz, a bowl made of crystal, or a bowl made of marble is best. Something that is actually from the earth instead of man-made. I think it's better to have something that actually is made by nature, so you can have a direct link to whatever it is that you're asking. If you're asking a question to a specific entity or being or God or goddess, I think it's better to have something that is mostly nature. Water, we know, is an essential part of this planet, and then we want something that's created from the rocks or the ground that will help us in invoking whatever it is that we're trying to, what answer we're looking for. So scrying is an art. Now, there is scrying that you can do in front of a mirror, but it's not the same, because in the end, you are dealing with something that is man-made. It's not, unless you look in something that's like some old window that is made from shell or whatever those old windows were made from. That's different, but still you don't want something that's man-made. Mirrors tend to give a different kind of energy when you're doing the scrying, and I just I don't have good memories with when I was a child, and I was shown different things about scrying in mirrors. I just don't like it, and it reminds me of a fun house, and it gives me weird vibes. So I think the Egyptian way, how they did the scrying is, I think, something that has a lot to do with the type of magic and the intention of what they are trying to achieve. Is what I'm trying. I'm going on and on about something that I just need to read this for you guys. But I just wanted to say that scrying in a mirror is different than what they're saying, is all I'm saying. So here we go. Now, when I was in my wanderings, and this is Isis, I rested at the oasis of Siwa, the holy city of the barren wastes of the western desert that was to become the domain of my red brother Set. My entrance to the forsaken metropolis marked the star-crossed path of my existence, for at this time, my mortal life was as barren as dust that abraded my eyes and seeped through my sandals. Every part of me was swathed in blue linen, for this is my color, in defense of the storming sands. Yet as I approached the glittering turquoise oasis, all was calmness itself. I rested at Siwa, a while to regain my strength after a long journey. Like so many pilgrims, I was lost in a sea of devotees who came there to find what their fortunes held. The priests at Siwa were great adepts at divining, for at this place was to be found the very core of the futures, the oracle of Amun himself, the hidden aspect of mighty Ra. The temple itself was perfect in all dimensions, as if Ptah himself had made it in his hand and set it down in a grove of lush palms. In the inner sanctum of the temple was a great statue of the god where all, including the great pharaohs, would approach and in secret ask their question. Now the nobles would have easy access to the oracle, they being rulers of high command, yet some of the common people waited many dawns for an audience, and so Siwa was scattered with every type of mortal. They came from everywhere. Here was a mother who begged Amun for knowledge of the health of her husband. There was a youth in a fit of lovesickness. The shaven-headed priests came too from both delta towns and the deep desert to inquire of their magical future. Could it be that they would follow in the lauded footsteps of great Imhotep, that conceiver of the first pyramids and weaver of spells and dreams? Now, even the mortals of Siwa, who were unconnected with the temple oracle, were superstitious by nature and could foresee the future by use of a bowl. Here are two of the rituals for your amusement. It can be dedicated to myself, Isis, Bast, the cat goddess who is my aunt, or lovely Hathor, my lovely daughter-in-law. Mortals do choose one of us three, for later in my history, we all became as one, deities of love, healing, and protection. A dream divination with the bowl of Isis. Divining a scrying bowl is taken, or a simple bowl that has been consecrated for this purpose. It must be made of a sustenance such as glazed clay or glass and not be harmful in drinking from. It must be safe. And again, I'm going to say, I still believe, and just as my own thoughts, it should be marble, crystal, granite. Because I just think that when it's man-made, it changes the outcome of the answer. But that's just my opinion. The leaves of the mint plant or lettuce are crushed, and their green juices is used as ink. Inside the lower part of the bowl, the person inscribes their question to the goddess. Then the name of the goddess is written 3 times. Isis, 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 or Hathor, 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 and so on. Water is then poured into the bowl to cover the inscriptions, and one waits until they are entirely dissolved and the questions has reached the ears of the goddess. The water is then drunk and the inquirer goes to sleep. On awakening, he or she will remember a dream in which the answers to the question is given. Which I thought that was really interesting, just because I believe that you don't have to go that far to get an answer, but scrying is something that could be interesting if you chose to do that. And I'm not saying not to do any of this stuff, because that's not what today's video is about. Today's video is really about showing you guys how magic was used in their everyday life. It's not like in the movies where they just created this unrealistic view of what magic is really all about. Now, I enjoyed the Harry Potter series. I mean, I read all the books to my daughter. I totally enjoyed them, but it kind of turned magic into something where it was really just, it was good against evil. And magic, the Egyptian magic, was basically used every single day in every part of their lives to get a certain type of outcome. They had the desires that we have today, but they just had a different way of going about getting the results because they truly believed that the gods and the goddesses could help them get a better result. And just remember that the pharaoh embodied the god and goddess. So they literally were the walking symbol of a god and goddess on the planet. So everything that was in their lives was really about preparing for the afterlife, understanding the gods and goddesses, not wanting to make them angry, having the god and goddesses a part of their lives every single day, in their jewelry that they wore. There was jewelry for protection. There was colors that were associated with the gods and goddesses. There were everything that you can imagine associated to the gods and the goddesses. This is one thing that I learned when I was in Egypt. They would shave their heads, not just for the lice, but they would also shave the priests and priestesses would shave their whole entire body and they have no hair at all as a form of cleanliness. And they would take baths multiple times a day. It was hard work being a priest and priestess. You had ceremony after ceremony to do. You had to be able to understand the symbols. You had to be literate. I mean, you had to learn how to be able to scribe, how to write. And I think that was great, but everybody has this romantic image of what being a priest and priestess was, and it was hard work. No different than somebody who goes into the seminary and is studying to be a priest. So there's study, there's learning that has to go into being able to invoke the gods and goddesses and to do to probably in their lives transcribe what the god and goddesses have to say. They have to be able to know what they're saying. Tell the illiterate folk what's going on. There was a lot to it. And I'm not trying to take the romance out of it because I mean, I don't know if I really could, because Egypt is just such an amazing place and a very powerful place. But I think that one thing that I wanted to get across today is that the Egyptians were a pretty amazing society. But I don't think that they're any different than we are today. I think the only difference is that we probably have less symbology in our lives. We don't look for those signs. And I don't think that we do multiple prayers within a day. Maybe there's some people who do. I'm sure there are people who do. I don't. But I do try to be grateful. So maybe just, we intend differently, just like magic is a different form of intention, or it's actually the same thing, or it's the sister of each other, who knows. But just be aware of the magic in your life every single day. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. It's easy to forget, and especially with last year when we had a tough year. A lot of people were isolated. So now it's time to get back into 2021 and to look for that magic in your life, and to just remember to stop and smell the roses and understand where those roses came from, and to be thankful to the universe or to God or the grandfathers or to Buddha or whoever you believe in, and just be thankful and grateful for the fact that you're alive and able to smell the rose. That's the important thing. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. It's a little weird, I know, but it was something that I enjoyed doing. So until next time, if you have any questions for Michael and me on anything, even in today's video or any other video that we've done, you can write us at dimensionalwalking@gmail.com. And then remember that you can also go to the Truth Seeker forum, and we're going to have all that information on the bottom of the video. So you'll be able to see where all that stuff is. So if you have a comment, please do give me a thumbs up. I know I probably butchered a few of those words, so be easy on me. And until next time, take care. Thank you for watching, and God bless.